So the different type of connectors that we're going to be looking at in a X base T type setup is the RJ45 connector or the RJ45 wall jack. Now the RJ45 wall jack is actually wired reverse to the actual connector type itself. In a minute here, what we're going to show is how to actually take a Ethernet cable and put it together and create a patch cable on your own. Of course, yeah, you can go buy them for relatively inexpensively, as long as you don't walk into a local retail store and they want to charge you, $15 for one. You can make the cables pretty inexpensively or buy the cables on your own. But it's very important to understand how these cables are actually made and how they're pinned out. Now you'll notice that the RJ45 connector is slightly larger than the typical RJ11 connector you use for telephone line. The difference is a telephone line uses 6 pins or 6-wire connector. The RJ45 connector uses an 8-wire type system. If you're dealing with your higher-end multi-layer switches, you might have the option of either having a GBIC card, which is the older card used on a 3550 series model, and a few others like the 2900 series models might have the older GBIC, wider-sized modules that plug in, provide you either fiber optic connection or, in this particular case, an Ethernet connection or unshielded twisted pair connection, rather, to the network. Now, this particular model, the graphic shown here, is showing the new SFP modules, the smaller footprint models that would go inside of a 3560 or a 3750 series switch. Now, you see me playing with quite a few of these as we get into the CCNP courses. I play with some of these cards as we're dealing with the BCMSN course. So, your other option for GBICs, a graphic here showing the older model, is showing the wider side. This is the multi-mode fiber connector that's used for long-range Ethernet ZX or LX/LH type fiber optic connection from site to site. So depending on what type of gigabit options you want for your Ethernet switches, you can choose either a fiber connector or a unshielded twisted pair connector for an interface, usually for your gigabit uplink ports for your switches. If we're to take an Ethernet cable and break it apart and look at the different wires in there, again, I mentioned that the RJ45 connectors are 8 wires, and really that's designed to run 8 different wires inside of the unshielded twisted pair cable. Now, they are color-coded, and the normal color coding, and I've seen some wires that don't follow the color coding, but hopefully you'll be smart enough to grab cables that follow the normal color coding. It should be 4 pairs, each twisted together, and interestingly enough, they're actually twisted at different lengths through the cable, which makes it a Category 5 based cable. So the 4 different pairs that you're dealing with, you have an orange pair, a blue pair, a green pair, and a brown pair. Now, if you're dealing with what would be typically considered Ethernet, 10 megabit Ethernet, so 10 base T, or 100 base T, the green pair and the orange pair are typically the only 2 pairs that are being used inside of this connector. The other 2 pairs, the blue pair and the brown pair, are not used. The blue pair, coincidentally, if you want the trivia side of things, was actually designed to run a voice pair, so you could do telephone access while doing Ethernet. Now, the problem they discovered was if you do this, if you're on phone at the same time you run data over that same series of wires, the electromagnetic interference you had between running telephone and running data at the same time would destroy the data and it didn't work. So we didn't actually end up using the blue pair. Now, the brown pair got some use recently with the non-standard power over Ethernet stuff. We don't use it anymore. It's actually done in line with the newer standards, but the brown pair was used. Now, all 4 pairs are used if you're doing unshielded twisted pair based gigabit Ethernet. All 4 wires are actually used. But with 10 megabit or 100 megabit Ethernet, only the green pair and orange pair are being used.